My wife had an affair with my business partner, and now they're trying to steal our $750, $0 family estate. She's claiming I'm hiding assets, but I just found out she's been secretly transferring money to a bank account in her sister's name for months. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing this down, but here we are. I've been with my wife, Jessica, for nearly 10 years, and I thought I knew her better than anyone. We built a life together, a nice house, a couple of kids, a business that was doing well enough to support us all. But in the last few months, something changed. Small things at first, her phone ringing at odd hours, her emails suddenly more secretive, her spending habits shifting without explanation. Nothing concrete, just enough to make me suspicious, but I ignored it. I figured I was paranoid, that maybe I was just overthinking it. Then came the day I found out the truth and everything shattered. It was a typical Tuesday. I was in my office, going through some paperwork when I noticed a strange transfer on our joint bank account statement. A sizable sum transferred to a bank I didn't recognize. I pulled out my laptop, looked deeper, and discovered she'd been funneling money into an account in her sister's name for months. The transfer was hidden behind layers of small transactions, but I pieced it together. Why would she do that? Why hide money and then suddenly start transferring it to someone else? It didn't add up. That's when I started digging into her phone. I know, invasion of privacy, but I was desperate. I found texts, emails, and pictures that made my stomach turn. She was having an affair with my business partner, David. I saw messages where they were planning secret meetings, exchanging flirtatious texts, and even discussing how to keep everything under wraps. She was lying about the late nights, the business trips she said she was taking. She was lying about everything. And the worst part, I found out that David knew about me, knew I was suspicious, and still went ahead with it. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My wife, the woman I trusted with everything, was betraying me with the one person I thought was a friend. I couldn't believe it. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, her sneaking off to business dinners, the way she'd avoid my eyes when I asked questions, the sudden secrecy around her phone. The betrayal cut deep, but what made it worse was realizing this was just the tip of the iceberg. They weren't just cheating, they were scheming to steal the estate we built together, a $750, $0 family inheritance that I thought was safe. Jessica kept claiming I was hiding assets, trying to manipulate the situation. But I now had proof she'd been secretly transferring money to her sister's account all along, probably to fund her secret life. It all came crashing down in a matter of days. I felt angry, betrayed, hurt, and then angry again, furious at her for throwing everything away over some affair, furious at David for being such a snake, and furious at myself for not seeing it sooner. I realized I couldn't just let this go. I had to do something. I couldn't let her and David walk away with everything we'd built. This wasn't just about the money, it was about respect, trust, and the fact that I'd been so blind for so long. That night I stayed up late going through every piece of evidence I had collected. I wasn't just planning to confront her, I was planning my revenge. I'd been played for a fool and I was done being the victim. The next step was clear. I had to take control, expose her lies, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. That's when I started devising my plan, one that would hit her where it hurt most. But I'll tell you, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity after everything she tried to steal from me. The morning after I uncovered everything, I knew I couldn't just sit on this information and pretend I didn't see it. I had to confront her, but I wanted to do it on my terms, calculated, precise, and with enough evidence to make sure she couldn't deny anything. I spent the entire day planning, going over what I'd say, how I'd say it, and most importantly, what I wanted as my outcome. I wasn't just furious. I was hurt, humiliated, and honestly, a little scared of what might come next. Jessica was supposed to be at her sister's house, visiting the kids, but I knew better than to trust her to be honest about her whereabouts. I decided to wait until she returned home, then corner her in the living room. When she finally walked in around 6 p.m., I could see the flicker of that familiar bitchy smirk she always wore when she thought she was in control. She was wearing her usual designer clothes, makeup perfect, and her posture that arrogant tilt. She looked at me like I was the one overreacting, like I was the one making a scene. I didn't waste any time. I pulled out the printed bank statements, the emails, and the text messages I'd saved. I laid everything out on the coffee table, watching her reaction carefully. Her eyes widened at first, then narrowed into that dismissive glare she always threw when she was trying to act innocent. "What is this?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Are you serious? You've been snooping through my stuff." I looked her straight in the eyes. "I know about the transfers, Jessica. I know you've been hiding money in your sister's account. I know. About the affair with David. How long has this been going on? How long have you been planning to screw me over?" Her face twisted into a sneer. "You're crazy. You're just paranoid. I've done nothing wrong. Maybe you're the one hiding assets, trying to make me look bad. Maybe I'm the victim here." I shook my head, feeling the rage bubbling up inside me. "You think I'm stupid. I know everything. Those texts, the secret meetings, the money transfers, you've been lying to me from the start. And David. That snake been screwing you behind my back while pretending to be my friend. Do you even hear yourself? You're a damn liar, Jessica. You think I don't see through your bullshit." She started to cry, fake tears, the kind she always used when she wanted sympathy. "You don't understand. I was just trying to protect us, to get us out of debt. The money in her sister's account, it was for emergencies. I never meant to hurt you. We're supposed to be a team. You're overreacting as usual." I felt my jaw tighten. That "for emergencies" line was classic Jessica, always twisting facts, always lying just enough to keep herself out of trouble. I knew she was lying, but I also knew I needed to be careful. I wanted her to admit everything, but I also knew I had to play my cards right. I told her I was done with her lies, that I had proof, and that I wasn't going to let her ruin what we built. Her reaction was pure contempt. She spat back at me, claiming I was jealous, insecure, that I was just trying to control her. She called me paranoid, said I was obsessed, and that she'd never cheat on me, that I was imagining things, but I didn't buy it. I could see her for what she was, a manipulative bitch who thought she could get away with everything. And David, that bastard, was just as culpable. That confrontation changed everything. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. She was a liar, a thief, and she had no intention of stopping her schemes. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to save what little dignity I had left and protect the estate. I told her I was done talking, that I'd be making some calls and getting legal advice. She looked at me with pure hatred, but I didn't care. I was done being naive. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, her lies, her sneers, the betrayal. I felt like a fool for trusting her for so long, but more than that, I felt a surge of determination. I was going to fight back, not just for the money, but for myself. I was going to make her regret ever crossing me. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew I'd find a way, and I knew this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up with a clear sense of purpose. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me, not anymore. I spent the day gathering every piece of evidence I could find, not just the financial stuff, but also her recent phone records, her social media messages, even her calendar. I wanted every detail. I needed to know exactly how deep she was into this scheme, how far she'd gone, and what she was planning next. My goal was to have all the leverage I needed to confront her with undeniable proof. I also reached out to my lawyer that morning. I knew I had to get ahead of this, especially with the estate involved. Jessica's been claiming I was hiding assets, trying to set me up as the bad guy, but now I had her dead to rights. I told the lawyer everything, handed over the evidence, and asked what my options were. His advice was straightforward. File for an immediate court order to freeze the assets, especially the money she was transferring, and prepare for a possible divorce. He also mentioned that the secret account in her sister's name was a major red flag, and that we could potentially seize those funds if we proved they were part of a fraudulent scheme. Meanwhile, Jessica kept playing the victim, trying to spin her lies. She was still insisting she was innocent, still claiming she was only trying to save us from financial ruin. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew her game, the tears, the desperate words, the denial. She thought she could manipulate her way out of this, but I was done with her lies. I knew she'd been lying to me. For months, maybe longer. Her manipulative side was on full display, but I refused to be played anymore. That afternoon, I decided to set a trap. I planted a fake document, a fake transfer request, in her email inbox. I wanted to see if she'd try to move more money if she was still scheming behind my back. Sure enough, within hours, I got a notification that she'd attempted to initiate another transfer. It was exactly what I needed. I immediately contacted my lawyer, who advised me to alert the bank and stop any further transactions. We also contacted her sister, warning her about the illegal transfer attempt and told her to keep her eyes open. I knew Jessica wasn't going to stop until she drained every penny and tried to cover her tracks. By late afternoon, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. I'd caught her red-handed again. The evidence was piling up, and I was finally in a position of strength. But I also felt a sinking sense of betrayal. How could someone I loved and trusted do this to me? To our family? It was like waking up from a nightmare I could escape. I started to realize that Jessica's entire persona was a lie, her bitchy attitude, her manipulations, her lies about being the victim, all part of a carefully crafted scheme to steal from me and destroy everything we built. I sat there staring at my phone, thinking about how to proceed. I knew I had to keep my cool, but inside I was boiling. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't going to be a pushover anymore. I was finally taking control. I told her I was going to lawyer up, that I was going to expose her lies publicly if I had to, and that I would fight to protect our estate, the estate she'd been falsely claiming I was hiding assets from. That evening, I confronted her again. This time I was cold, calculated. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the money transfers, the scheming. Her face drained of color, but she still had that defiant look, like she thought she could manipulate her way out of it. I told her if she didn't come clean, I was going to take legal action and I'd make sure she paid every penny back plus penalties. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't just a betrayal, it was a crime. I warned her that I'd be exposing her to everyone, that her reputation would be ruined if she kept lying. She finally broke down and tried to deny everything, but I had enough evidence now to shut her down. I told her she had two choices: come clean and work with me to settle this, or face the legal consequences. She looked furious, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She knew I wasn't bluffing anymore. That night I slept fitfully, knowing I'd finally taken a stand. I'd caught her red-handed, and I was ready to go all the way to protect what's mine. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about dignity, respect, and making sure she understood she couldn't manipulate her way out of this mess. I'd be damned if she'd ruin me without a fight. The days that followed felt like living in a storm I couldn't escape from. I had the evidence, the legal advice, and a plan in motion, but Jessica wasn't backing down either. She kept trying to spin her lies, acting innocent and helpless, even as I knew she was plotting her next move. I kept my cool, though I knew that losing my temper wouldn't help me win this fight. I was determined to stay one step ahead, to turn her own game against her. I met with my lawyer again, and we drafted the official paperwork to freeze all her accounts and prevent any further transfers. We also filed for a court order to investigate her financial activities and to get access to the secret account in her sister's name. The moment I handed the papers to the bank, I felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. It was the beginning of the real fight, a legal battle to protect my assets and expose her schemes. Meanwhile, Jessica's behavior grew more erratic. She started throwing tantrums, crying, claiming I was ruining her life, that I was trying to control her. She even made a scene in front of the kids, trying to guilt-trip me into backing down. But I refused to be manipulated anymore. I told her if she kept lying and scheming, she'd face the full consequences. I wasn't going to let her ruin everything I'd worked for, not just the estate, but my reputation, my sanity. One evening, I decided I needed to confront her once and for all. I sat her down in the living room, looked her straight in the eyes, and told her I knew about everything, the affair, the secret money transfers, the lies. I told her that I was done playing nice, that I was going to take her to court and make sure she paid everything back. I told her that her manipulations wouldn't save her anymore, that she'd lost her last shred of control. Her face twisted into a sneer, but I could see the fear lurking behind her eyes. She knew I was serious. That night, I secretly installed a recording device in the house, not to spy on her, but to document her reactions if she tried to lie her way out of this. I knew she'd escalate her lies or try to manipulate me further, and I needed undeniable proof of her behavior. I was ready for whatever came next. I also made copies of all the evidence I had, stored them securely, and prepared for a possible divorce filing. The emotional toll was enormous. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and enraged. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. Finally, I was taking control of the situation. I realized that Jessica had been planning her betrayal for months, hiding her true intentions behind of a perfect wife. Her bitchy attitude, the constant lies, her attempts to gaslight me, all part of her scheme to steal from me and destroy what we built. Despite her protests, I knew I had to follow through. I couldn't let her manipulate her way out of this. I was ready to fight for my rights, for the estate, and for my own sanity. I told her that if she wanted to keep lying, she'd be the one paying the price. I was done being the fool in this game. It was time to get serious. I had the evidence, the legal backing, and a plan to expose her fully. The war was just beginning, and I was determined to come out on top. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Once the court approved the freeze on her accounts and ordered an investigation into her finances, I could feel the weight lifting slightly, but the battle was far from over. Jessica's reaction was predictable. She doubled down on her lies, trying to convince everyone around her that I was the bad guy, the paranoid husband who was just jealous and controlling. She staged a few crying fits, claiming I was trying to ruin her reputation, but I knew better. I had the evidence and I was prepared to use it. In the meantime, I hired a private investigator to dig into her activities further. I wanted to know who she was talking to, what she was planning, and whether she'd made any more moves to transfer money or assets. Turns out, she had been secretly meeting with David even more frequently, sometimes late at night, sometimes at that same fancy hotel they'd been sneaking off to. The investigator also uncovered her ongoing transfers to her sister's account, which she'd been trying to hide even more carefully now. The proof was stacking up, and it was clear Jessica was desperate to cover her tracks, but I had everything I needed. One night, I decided to confront her directly with everything I'd learned. I sat her down in the living room, laid out the evidence on the table, and told her I knew about her lies, her affair, and her scheme to steal the estate. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her and trying to control her. But I didn't flinch. I told her I was done playing her game, that I had all the proof I needed to take her to court and expose her lies publicly. I warned her that if she kept trying to manipulate her way out of this, she'd be the one paying the price. She screamed, called me every name in the book, and tried to turn the tables, claiming I was the one cheating, hiding assets, and that I was just jealous of her relationship with David. It was classic gaslighting, but I was ready for it. I told her that I'd already documented everything, that I had witnesses, and that I was prepared to go to the police if necessary. I also made it clear I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I was done being the fool in her game. That night, I installed a hidden camera in the house, not to spy on her, but to record her reactions if she tried to lie again or make any more false accusations. I wanted irrefutable proof of her behavior and her intent to deceive. I also started preparing the legal documents for a divorce, knowing that once everything was in order, I could finally cut her out of my life completely. I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief that I was finally taking control, anger that she had lied and betrayed me so badly. Over the next few weeks, the situation escalated. Jessica's attempts to manipulate the situation only made her look more desperate. Her lies started unraveling faster, and I was finally able to present all the evidence to the court. The judge was furious about her attempts to transfer money illegally and her ongoing affair with David. The court ordered her to pay back the stolen funds, and I was awarded full control of the estate. Jessica was furious, but I didn't care. I'd finally won the legal battle, but emotionally I was drained. I felt like I'd been through hell, but I also knew I couldn't go back. I had to start rebuilding not just my assets, but my trust in myself. Looking back, I realize how naive I was to ignore the signs for so long. But I also learned a lot about resilience and the importance of standing up for yourself. Jessica's betrayal was one of the worst experiences of my life, but it forced me to see the truth that sometimes people you love can turn out to be your biggest enemies. I'm still healing, still trying to trust again, but I know I'll be okay. I want others to know that no matter how bad it gets, you can fight your way out of it. Just don't let anyone steal your dignity and never ignore the signs when someone's lying to you. After everything was finalized legally, I felt a strange sense of emptiness mixed with relief. The estate was secure, Jessica was out of my life, and I had taken back control of what was rightfully mine. But the emotional scars ran deep. I kept replaying the betrayals, the lies, the moments I missed, and the times I doubted myself. It's hard to describe how it feels to realize the person you trusted most in the world was secretly working against you all along. It's a kind of heartbreak that leaves you questioning everything, even your own judgment. In the aftermath, I decided to cut all contact with Jessica. The woman I once loved was now just a stranger who tried to destroy me. I focused on rebuilding my life, spending more time with my kids, and working on my business. It's been a long road, but I've learned some valuable lessons along the way. Trust is fragile, and you have to protect yourself not just financially, but emotionally too. Never ignore the small signs of deceit, and never let anyone manipulate your trust for their own gain. The hardest part was coming to terms with the fact that I was for so long. I was angry at myself for not seeing the warning signs earlier, but I also understood that sometimes people hide their true selves very well. I learned that being cautious doesn't mean distrusting everyone, but it does mean paying attention to the details, especially when it comes to money and loyalty. Never assume everything is perfect, just because it looks that way on the surface. Now I'm focused on moving forward, rebuilding what was broken, and making sure I never let anyone take advantage of me again. I've become more cautious, more aware, and more determined to protect what's mine. If there's one thing I want others to take from my experience, it's this. Never ignore the signs, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to fight for yourself. Because at the end of the day, no one is coming to save you. You have to be your own hero. And I am.